The closeness always seems to peak right before it ends. That's not a coincidence. You felt it. The last week before someone moves away suddenly feels warmer than the whole year before it. The final months of a relationship that's already failing can feel more tender than the good years ever did. Your brain isn't playing a cruel joke on you. It's running a program older than language, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's the reframe. You assume closeness causes you to notice the ending is near. It's actually backwards. Noticing the ending is near is what causes the closeness. The moment your brain detects a deadline on a relationship, it changes how it processes every single interaction with that person. Nothing about them changed. Your attention did. Psychologist Laura Carstensen spent decades studying this exact flip. She found that when people believe their time with someone, or their time in general, is limited, they stop chasing new information and start chasing emotional meaning. She called it socioemotional selectivity. Young people with decades ahead of them tend to network, explore, meet strangers, keep options open. People facing an ending do the opposite. They narrow. They call the people who already matter. They stop small talk and go straight for what's real. Time isn't the cause of closeness. The awareness of an ending is. Notice that. It's probably happening to you right now with something in your life you haven't even flagged as ending yet. There's a second piece to this, and it comes from memory research, not relationship research. Daniel Kahneman studied how people remember experiences, and he found something strange. You don't remember an experience by averaging every moment of it. You remember it by its peak and by how it ended. A vacation with one incredible afternoon and a rough final day gets remembered worse than a mediocre vacation that ended sweetly. He called it the peak end rule. Your memory is a highlight reel, not a transcript. Now put those two studies together. An ending is coming. Your attention narrows onto what matters, the way Carstensen described. And your memory is about to weight that final stretch more heavily than everything before it, the way Kahneman described. So your brain does the only thing that makes sense. It floods that last stretch with presence, with warmth you didn't even know you'd been withholding. Not because the person suddenly deserves it more, because this is the part your memory will actually keep. That's the twist. You think you're feeling more love. You're actually watching your brain make a final, desperate recording. Here's what nobody tells you about that recording, though. It isn't sad. It's efficient. Grief researcher George Bonanno has spent his career studying how people actually respond to loss, and one of his most surprising findings is that most people are far more resilient than we assume. Part of that resilience comes from exactly this mechanism. The intensified closeness before a loss isn't your heart breaking early. It's your mind gathering everything it can before the door closes, building the version of this person it's going to carry forward. People who let themselves feel that window instead of numbing it tend to grieve with less regret afterward. The closeness isn't wasted sentiment, it's preparation disguised as feeling. Think about the last real conversation you had with someone before you knew, deep down, that things had changed for good. Was it ordinary, or did some part of you already know, and lean in a little harder without ever deciding to? Hospice workers see a sharper version of this than almost anyone. Social worker Kenneth Doka gave this phenomenon its clinical name, anticipatory grief, after noticing that families of terminal patients often go through the hardest, most emotionally saturated stretch of their entire relationship in the final weeks, sometimes the final days. Old arguments dissolve, old distance closes, people say things out loud they'd been carrying silently for 20 years. It looks, from the outside, like tragedy pulling people together. Doka's work suggests something colder and more mechanical underneath it. The visible countdown is doing the work. Remove the countdown and most of those same conversations would keep getting postponed indefinitely, the way they always had been. There's an older name for a piece of this, too. Anthropologist Ernest Becker argued that a huge amount of human behavior is quietly organized around an awareness of endings, even when we're not thinking about death directly. Any smaller ending runs the same script in miniature: a job you're leaving, a summer that's almost over, a friend who's about to move across the country. The moment a horizon appears, your mind starts treating everything before it differently, more vivid, more valuable, more now. This is why the last day always feels heavier than the first 100. Not because it's objectively more important, because it's the last chance your brain has to encode it before the file closes for good. Look at how this shows up on your phone. You'll go months barely texting someone, single-word replies, half-read messages. Then a moving date gets announced, or a diagnosis, or just a vague sense that things are drifting, and suddenly every message gets a real answer. You start sending the good photos instead of the easy ones, You start saying the thing you meant instead of the thing that was quicker to type. Nothing about the friendship changed overnight. The deadline just became visible, and your brain, obedient as ever, rerouted all its attention toward the exit. It's the same reason a coworker you were mostly polite with for 3 years suddenly becomes the person you actually open up to during your last 2 weeks at the job. The same reason a going away card gets sentences in it that would have felt embarrassing to say out loud a month earlier. Nothing about that coworker got more interesting. The exit sign just turned on, and your attention, which had been running on autopilot the entire time, finally switched into the mode it had been capable of the whole time. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. If closeness only spikes once an ending is visible, what does that say about all the closeness you're not feeling right now with the people who aren't leaving yet? The ones you assume will just always be there, so you never bother giving them the goodbye level version of your attention. You don't actually need a real ending to unlock this. That's the twist inside the twist. Carstenson's later research found something almost hopeful buried in all this. You can trigger the same narrowing, the same presence, just by imagining a horizon, even a false one. People asked to simply picture moving far away, purely hypothetically, showed the same shift toward emotional depth as people who are facing a real goodbye. Your brain doesn't need the ending to be real, it just needs to believe one is possible, so try it deliberately. Pick one person you've quietly filed under forever, and for one conversation, treat it like it isn't. Watch how much of it you were skipping. None of this requires tragedy to work, it just requires honesty about a fact you already know and routinely ignore. Nobody is actually permanent, not really, not on the timescale your attention operates on day to day. You know this in theory. You just don't let it touch how you show up on a random Tuesday because Tuesday doesn't feel like a deadline, but every Tuesday you skip like that is one your future self will not get to relive with the peak-end version of attention. It'll just blur into the average, the part memory doesn't bother saving. The people who get the goodbye level attention are statistically going to be a small fraction of everyone you've ever loved. Everyone else just quietly fades under the comfortable assumption of forever, an assumption your own mind knows somewhere underneath is false. You could borrow tomorrow's grief today and let it do something useful, not to make yourself sad, to make yourself present on purpose before the deadline does it for you. The closeness always seems to peak right before it ends. Now you know why. It was never really about the ending. It was about finally paying attention like the ending had already come. You don't have to wait for the real one. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing for more videos.